Welcome to this audiobook summary of The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. In this book, Dobelli explores the many ways our thinking can go wrong and offers practical advice on how to improve decision-making by recognizing and avoiding these common mental traps. Let's dive into some key insights from this brilliant guide to clearer thinking. Introduction: Why we don't think clearly. Rolf Dobelli begins by explaining that our minds are prone to making errors due to cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that often lead us astray. We think these shortcuts help us make faster decisions, but in reality, they often result in poor choices. Dobelli's goal is to help us recognize these biases and make better, more rational decisions. Cognitive biases, mental errors we all make. One of the main ideas in The Art of Thinking Clearly is that everyone, no matter how intelligent, falls prey to cognitive biases. Dobelli introduces us to some of the most common ones. The sunk cost fallacy. This happens when we continue to invest time, money, or effort into something just because we've already invested in it, even if it no longer makes sense. For example, staying in a bad relationship or finishing a boring book just because you've already spent so much time on it. Dobelli encourages us to let go of past investments and focus on whether the decision makes sense going forward. Confirmation bias. This bias is when we seek out information that supports what we already believe and ignore anything that contradicts it. It's the reason we often surround ourselves with like-minded people or stick to news sources that align with our views. To think clearly, Dobelli suggests we actively seek out opposing viewpoints and challenge our own assumptions. The availability bias. We tend to overestimate the likelihood of events that easily come to mind, like plane crashes or shark attacks, simply because they are more vivid or memorable. However, just because something is easy to remember doesn't mean it's common. To overcome this bias, Dobelli advises us to look at actual data and statistics when making decisions. Overcoming biases, tips for thinking more clearly. Dobelli doesn't just highlight our thinking errors, he also offers practical tips for overcoming them. One key strategy is delaying decisions. When we rush into a choice, we are more likely to rely on mental shortcuts. Taking time to gather more information and reflect can help us avoid making impulsive, irrational decisions. He also recommends questioning our own judgment. This means being aware of how biases might affect our thinking and asking ourselves whether we are making decisions based on logic or emotion. For example, if we are deciding to buy a product, are we choosing it because we've researched it thoroughly or because the advertisement was appealing? Another important tip is to stay humble. We all like to believe we're right, but being open to the idea that we might be wrong is essential for clearer thinking. The more we accept that our minds are not perfect, the better we become at improving our decisions. The illusion of control. Another major theme in the book is the illusion of control. Dobelli explains that humans tend to overestimate how much control they have over events. We like to believe that success or failure is entirely in our hands, but often, luck or random factors play a large role. For instance, many people think they can predict stock market movements, but the market is influenced by countless unpredictable factors. Dobelli advises us to recognize when we have no control and to accept uncertainty rather than trying to force outcomes. The contrast effect, judging by comparison. The contrast effect is another mental bias Dobelli explores. This happens when we judge something not by its actual qualities, but by how it compares to something else. For example, a house may seem cheap after viewing an expensive one, even if it's not a good deal on its own. By being aware of this effect, we can evaluate things more objectively, based on their true value rather than comparisons. Herd mentality, following the crowd. Humans are social creatures, and we often follow the crowd without realizing it. Herd mentality leads us to go along with what everyone else is doing, even if it's not the best decision. Dobelli encourages us to think for ourselves and not simply follow trends or popular opinions without careful consideration. Conclusion: think smarter, live better. In The Art of Thinking Clearly, Rolf Dobelli teaches us that clearer thinking is within our reach if we learn to identify and avoid common thinking errors. By becoming aware of cognitive biases, challenging our assumptions, and taking more time with our decisions, we can improve our judgment and make smarter choices in all areas of life. Thank you for listening to this audiobook summary of The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. We hope this summary has given you some valuable insights into how to sharpen your thinking and make better decisions. Don't forget to subscribe for more book summaries and thoughtful content.